Abuse of older people is a hidden problem. As a society, we must not tolerate abuse of older people, as it can affect 1 in 20 people over the age of 65. Older people, like all citizens, have a right to be safe from harm, exploitation and neglect. In South Australia, the Age Rights Advocacy Service, or ARAS as we are known, provides information and support to assist people to overcome situations of abuse and to plan for the future. This DVD features stories that we hear all too often and aims to raise awareness of the different forms that abuse can take. We encourage you to ask yourself, is this happening to someone I know? Remember, there's no excuse for abuse.
I never thought this would happen to me, not in my family. Being on the farm, we always supported each other. I feel embarrassed and ashamed that my son could treat me this way, especially as I'm older now and rely on him for support. My dear husband Max passed away 4 years ago. He was a good man. We were very happy and had 4 children, a boy and 3 girls, and life on the farm was good. I miss him so much, you know.
Can you tell me why your relationship with your son has changed?
Well, a few years ago, my son Harry borrowed $10,000 from me. But now he refuses to pay it back. Because there was nothing in writing, it's hard to prove it was a loan. He gets angry when I mention it, and I'm not sure who can help me, so I suppose I'll have to let it go. Doesn't seem fair on the girls, though. Lately, Harry's been putting pressure on me to sign the farm over to him. He has worked it, but he's been paid a salary, gets free housing, a vehicle and other bills paid. Max told me he wanted all of our children to have something from the farm, not just our son.
You should always seek legal and financial advice before signing any documents. Have you signed anything yet?
No, not yet. When I refused to sign, Harry shouted at me and frightened me. Then he pushed me and I fell against the table and bruised my arm. Now I'm worried that he'll become more violent, so maybe I'll have to do as he says. I don't want to see Harry get into trouble. I just want everything to be okay again. It would really upset Max if he knew this was happening to me now.
It must have been difficult to seek help with such a personal situation. What did you do?
A friend at the club told me to contact ARAS. The advocate was very understanding and went with me to the legal service. I have now made an enduring power of attorney and a new will that takes into consideration the money I've already given to Harry. This will ensure the girls get a fair share, just as Max wanted. I've also decided to move off the farm into the town, so I'm not so isolated and community services are there if I need it. ARAS contacted the health service and a social worker assisted me to find a retirement unit and move in. She also organised transport to the daycare centre so I can catch up with my friends. Thanks to ARAS, I now feel much stronger in standing up for my rights and I no longer feel alone.
Mary seemed so nice in the beginning. I met her at the shops. I was tired, it was hot, so I accepted her offer to drive me home. The least I could do was give her a cup of tea. Well, we became friends. She helped me around the house, took me shopping, and even did my banking. It was good not to worry about everything. She even did my medications. Well, one day Mary said that she had to move from her place and had nowhere to go. What could I do? I said she could move in with me. Then she took over. She wouldn't let me see any of my old friends. My adult children live interstate and they seemed happy that someone was in the house to keep an eye on me. I didn't tell them she had my bank book and ruled my life. I felt too ashamed that I'd let it all happen. She even used to unplug the phone, lock the door and disappear for hours at a time.
Carers are responsible for providing support to those they care for. Mary sounds as though she took advantage of you.
Yeah, she did. Last week I completely mistaken my heart medication because she wasn't there to give it to me. I was hungry and there was no food in the fridge. Couldn't call anyone and I started to feel woozy. In desperation I smashed a window and called out. Luckily the neighbour heard me and called the ambulance. I was taken to hospital and they eventually found Mary at the Pokies Lounge down the road.
What happened at the hospital?
The doctor referred me to the hospital social worker. They told me about ARAS and I agreed to talk to an advocate privately. It was good to tell someone what had been happening and just to say how I really felt. The advocate listened carefully and gave me some options to consider. In contacting the bank, I found out that all my money had been taken by Mary. I was so upset and worried about how I was going to pay my bills.
Usually the police become involved when there is alleged theft. What help did they offer?
The police were very helpful, and at my request, they asked Mary to leave. They were on hand to make sure that she didn't take anything else, and they're now looking into possible criminal charges relating to the theft of my money. Now, ARAS arranged a nursing service to help with medications and personal care. They also arranged meals and an assessment for a community care package so I can stay home. I've also met with a financial counsellor who is negotiating with the utility companies about outstanding bills. I feel more confident already, and I'm looking forward to catching up with my old friends at the social club. Suddenly, my life seems a lot brighter.
I'm a social worker in a hospital and I met Joyce after she'd been admitted as an emergency patient. A neighbour hadn't seen her for over a week and became worried when she didn't answer the door. The neighbour knew that Joyce was forgetful and that her only daughter rarely visited her. On several occasions, the neighbour had phoned the daughter to tell her that Joyce was wandering and that she was hungry. The daughter had been very offhand but had called around with some food. She did say that services were being put in place but nothing ever really seemed to happen. The daughter was now eventually not returning the phone calls, so the neighbour phoned the police and requested a welfare check. What else could she really do? The police forced entry into the house and found Joyce lying in soiled bedclothes. She wasn't able to stand up and walk to the kitchen to get water or food. The fridge was almost empty and the house was extremely dirty. An ambulance was called and Joyce was taken to hospital. She was extremely dehydrated, weighed under 50 kilos and was very confused. When her condition eventually stabilised, she was referred to us to arrange discharge planning. Her daughter visited her often in hospital and assured us that she would care for her mother. Joyce scored 27 out of 30 on the mini mental, but we all felt very worried about her returning home. After discussing the situation with an advocate from ARAS, I arranged a psychogeriatric assessment to find out really what level of insight Joyce had into her care needs and whether she could manage her own affairs. The assessment unfortunately indicated that she had very little insight and didn't have any decision-making capacity. I then contacted the Office of the Public Advocate and prepared a guardianship board application. Joyce is now living in a nursing home and is much healthier and seems happier. Her finances are being managed by a trustee company. Her daughter was upset, but I can cope with that, knowing that, what happened was in Joyce's best interests.
I work with the Aboriginal community quite often in rural and isolated locations, and that's where I happened to catch up with Uncle Bruce. And Uncle Bruce had mentioned to me they'd become quite lonely recently because his wife had passed away, which was quite understandable. They'd been married many, many years. And he'd asked his grandson, Kevin, to move in with him. And this idea of Kevin moving in wasn't really taken too well by the family, the extended family, because they knew that young Kevin had been drinking and drugging recently. And there was a bit of concern to them. And within a few weeks of moving in, they'd noticed that Uncle Bruce's seemed a bit tense and a bit worried. They even took him shopping one day, and they'd noticed that he mentioned that he didn't have any money, and that was because young Kevin had taken his money. And not long after that, the caseworker had noticed that Uncle Bruce's bills weren't getting paid. His electricity wasn't paid, his gas, and his phone was cut off. The workers had become a bit uncomfortable when they'd visited Uncle Bruce while young Kevin was there, because while he was there, they'd often interrupt in meetings, he'd be a bit rude towards the workers, and Uncle Bruce didn't really say too much. Although he did look miserable and seemed to have lost a bit of weight, and generally looked a bit stressed, and they knew something was wrong. And the caseworker happened to voice their concerns to the services coordinator, who decided to invite Uncle Bruce along to a barbecue at the centre, just to talk to him in private away from his nephew. I happened to be visiting at the time, so Uncle Bruce agreed to talk to me as well, and the coordinator, about the overall situation. He really opened up while he was at the centre, and then he said he didn't really want Kevin living with him anymore because he was taking all his money, and had even become a bit violent towards his grandfather, and it got to the stage where it even had spent all his life savings of his grandfather's. And Uncle Bruce basically was in a situation where he didn't know where to go to next. But after some discussion, it was agreed that a family conference should be held to talk about the overall situation. And at this meeting, it was decided that Kevin would move in with other family members away from Uncle Bruce, and then Uncle Bruce's daughter would move in, just to keep him company for a while to get him back on his feet. And he also agreed to change his bank details and arrange for Centrelink to automatically take deductions out to pay for his electricity and gas and phone bills before he received his payment. An ACAT was organised so that Uncle Bruce could access more hours of care through a community aged care package. I saw Uncle Bruce the other day. He was a lot happier and more content, and mentioned that he was enjoying the quiet life, which I thought was pretty funny considering he was surrounded by a big mob of grandchildren.
We've been providing fortnightly domestic assistance for Maria for the past year. She has various health conditions, and although her life is restricted, she was always cheerful and still attended cultural celebrations and church with her friends. Recently, one of her daughters has moved into her retirement unit with her, and we've noticed that Maria has changed. She doesn't want to go out and doesn't chat to the care worker like she used to. The daughter is always around and seems to have taken over. Last week, the care worker heard loud voices as she arrived, and Maria looked frightened. There were also bruises around her wrists, and she was untidy. The care worker told me of her concerns, and I phoned to arrange a service review. The daughter wasn't keen, but I explained it was the usual procedure. While there, I suggested that Maria attend a special get-together at the community club. She readily agreed, but her daughter tried to dissuade her, saying her car was out of action. I offered to collect Maria and phoned the day before to remind them. Despite that, Maria was not dressed when I arrived, so I helped her and we eventually reached the function. Before I took her home, I found a private office and we talked about her situation and how concerned we were. She broke down and said that her daughter was domineering, abusive, and if Maria speaks up, she grabs her wrists and shakes her. Maria has capacity and is very clear about not wanting the police or other family members involved. She did allow me to contact her church, and they are now providing transport for Maria to attend services. I wasn't sure what else to do, so I phoned ARAS. They suggested some other options, including having the retirement village manager ask Maria's daughter to leave because the contract states that visitors are not allowed to stay indefinitely. Another option was for Maria to enter respite care for a while so that she can consider what she wants to do without feeling pressured. Her GP could assist with this process. We also offered to put in some more service hours so that Maria was not isolated. Maria decided that she needed some time away from her daughter and wanted to go to talk to an advocate confidentially about the possible ramification and extended family situation. Her GP arranged an urgent aged care assessment, and fortunately a respite bed was available in a residential care facility that caters for older people from her cultural background. ARAS is now supporting Maria.
For confidential, free information and support to prevent and overcome abuse, contact the Age Rights Advocacy Service on 8232 5377 or 1800 700 600.